Microsoft Dynamics 365 is a great ERP product that we see a lot of companies implementing these days, but the Microsoft Dynamics ecosystem and channel partner network is a complete mess. In this video, we're going to talk about how to navigate that reality and how to find the right implementation partner for your Microsoft D365 implementation. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting Group. We are an independent consulting firm that helps clients through their digital transformation journeys. And I was recently working with one of our clients that is implementing D365. They had reached out to us and asked us to recover a failed D365 implementation. Now, this is a mid-sized manufacturing organization that had been implementing for close to a year. They weren't satisfied with the results they were getting. They were way over budget. The go-live wasn't at all what they expected, and it was incomplete. It didn't have the functionality that they had hoped for. So one of the first things we did is we went in to assess what went wrong with this project and how do we get it back on track. And one of the things we found is that they had a pretty weak implementation partner, and it was the partner that was recommended by Microsoft. So they didn't realize that they had choices and they didn't know what their other options were. So some of the challenges we commonly see with companies that are struggling with their D365 implementation partners, or at least having trouble finding their implementation partner, is that first of all, most Microsoft Dynamics partners are very technology focused, and that was the case here with this client. It's a very technologically focused company that knew the software inside and out, but they weren't good project managers, they weren't good business operations type of people, they certainly weren't good at organizational change management and some of the things that are critical to the success of a project like that. Another challenge that this particular client had is that they didn't have any governance over the project, and they were really leaning on that implementation partner to provide that program management and governance, but they weren't actually getting that. So that's an example of just one recent D365 implementation experience that we have. Some of the things we see in the marketplace that are challenges for clients, first of all, it's a very fragmented space as far as the Dynamics 365 implementation partners. There's literally tens of thousands of implementation partners to choose from, which can make it very difficult to navigate. And those tens of thousands of options range from small mom and pop startup types of consulting firms to larger organizations that have thousands of consultants. And there's a lot of options in between as well. So navigating that whole mess of options is very difficult, and that's something that companies struggle with. The other thing that complicates matters even more is that you don't have any other options but to buy from a reseller. Microsoft in general has taken a very hands-off approach to how they sell their enterprise software, and they have really used their network of implementation partners and resellers and VARs to fuel the growth of D365 and some of the legacy Microsoft ERP products. So on one hand, it's a strength of Microsoft because it has allowed them to gain pretty good market share in the space, and they've got tens of thousands of people out there selling their product for them. But as a customer, as a client, it makes navigating that landscape very difficult. The other part of that is not only are there a lot of options to choose from, but Microsoft doesn't have very solid quality assurance or quality controls over the types of partners they have in their network, at least not compared to other software vendors that we work with. So whereas a lot of the bigger software vendors like SAP and Oracle and Infor, Epicor, some of the other partners or the other vendors tend to have more stringent control over who the top tier partners are and over the certification of their resources, Microsoft Dynamics has much more of a hands-off approach, and they really need to do a better job of controlling the channel and ensuring that there's a consistent level of quality among the players in the space. So that's a challenge that we all face when we're dealing with D365 types of implementations. And then the last thing that really complicates this for clients is that you also have this concept of ISVs, or independent software providers. People that have taken the core Microsoft D365 product and they've tailored it in some way for a specific industry vertical, maybe a specific set of functionality that isn't inherent in the core ERP product. So then we further complicated matters by now saying not only do we have to choose what our implementation partner is, but now we've got to figure out, is that the right variation of D365 as opposed to buying just the vanilla software off the shelf. So again, something that could be viewed as a strength in the fact that you do have these ISVs out there offering the specific software to specific industries can also be a liability because of the confusion that it creates and the complexity that is needed to navigate that. So that's the lay of the land, that's the landscape we have to deal with in the Microsoft Dynamics space. What do we do about it? So there's a number of things we can do to find the right implementation partner and navigate the complexities that go along with that. First of all is to recognize that it is a mess. And I think it's okay to recognize that. A lot of times companies don't understand that there's inconsistency of quality. They don't understand that they have options other than who Microsoft may recommend to you, or based on who the first Microsoft VAR or reseller is to contact you. Doesn't mean that that has to be the person or the firm that you work with to buy the software and or implement the software from a technology perspective. So with that number of options and the recommendations that may come from Microsoft or other parties, it's important to recognize that just because something was recommended doesn't mean it's the best option for you and that you do have other options available. Now, the second thing that's important in navigating the decision around who your implementation partner, your system integrator, your VAR will be for D365 is to understand what exactly you're getting with D365. And I'm going to whiteboard to illustrate what I mean by that. So Microsoft D365 is actually an evolution, and consider it a best of greatest hits from legacy Microsoft ERP products. So back in the day, prior to D365, Microsoft acquired a number of ERP vendors and ERP systems that they continued to sell for a number of years, in some cases decades, and now they've moved over to the D365 platform by leveraging some of those older legacy systems. So for example, we had Microsoft Great Plains, which was primarily an accounting system that was used by a lot of small to mid-sized organizations. Microsoft acquired Great Plains and made that part of their core ERP system. You also had Microsoft Dynamics AX, which primarily was a manufacturing ERP solution. I think it was based out of Europe originally. Microsoft bought it and put it under the platform or under the fold of Microsoft. And then you also had Microsoft Navision too, which is another product that was an acquisition. That was another product that was a separate product from Great Plains, separate from AX. And what they've done here is that they've taken these solutions and taken some of the select functionality from these different systems to create D365. And now what this does, this isn't a bad thing, but what it does is it creates confusion, especially for legacy Microsoft users who maybe are using one of these products. They don't necessarily know what exactly they're getting with D365. If I was using AX before, say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I implemented AX. Now I'm thinking of upgrading to D365. I don't know what strengths and weaknesses that I'm bringing over from AX versus strengths and weaknesses I might be pulling over from one of the other two solutions. So that's an important thing during your evaluation and selection process, is to make sure you recognize and understand what exactly is D365 compared to what I expect it to be. Even if you're not a legacy Microsoft ERP user, you're using some other system out there, it's really important to dig into this, because even some of the resellers and implementation partners in the marketplace don't fully understand the scope and capabilities of D365 simply because it's relatively new in the marketplace. The third thing to keep in mind when selecting the right reseller or VAR for your D365 implementation is to be careful when you're working with an ISV or the independent software vendor. These are the companies that have taken D365 and created a version of the software that's custom to a specific set of functionality or a specific industry. Like I said before, this is a strength of Microsoft's, and the product is flexible enough to allow that sort of customization and tailored solutions for different industries and different functions. But at the same time, we have to recognize that now that we've gone off the reservation a bit. We've gone away from core D365, which is supported by Microsoft and tens of thousands of other resellers, Now we've moved over to a unique one-off situation and solution that is supported by only one provider. When I say supported, I mean more from an implementation perspective, knowledge of those changes. The technical support of the core system itself is still provided by Microsoft, but now I'm more dependent on this ISV to implement and understand what exactly I've implemented because I've changed the D365 platform or changed the general framework of the software to fit a certain industry. So really understand how much of what you're getting is within the scope of an ISV versus the core D365 product. That's really important. And if we're going too far off the reservation, just recognize that that is a risk. That's something we need to be aware of. And it's a trade-off between having that tailored functionality that's specific to our industry and maybe giving up some of that functionality to have a more core functionality that we know is going to continue to be supported by Microsoft via upgrades and further R&D dollars and whatnot. Now, the fourth thing to look for when looking for the right system integrator or reseller or VAR for your D365 implementation is cultural fit. Really understand the individuals that you would be getting on your project and not just looking at their skill sets and their competencies, although that is important. We need to know that they understand the software, they can handle the technical and functional components of an implementation. But we also want to know, perhaps more importantly, that they would fit in with our team, interact well with our team, and have a good cultural fit throughout the course of the implementation. So the next thing we need to consider as we're evaluating potential options in the D365 space is to augment what the system integrator and the reseller does with the other capabilities that are going to be required for a successful implementation. As I mentioned in the case study up front, there are a lot of things that the system integrator and the reseller that this particular client was using that they couldn't do that was critical to the success of the project. So just to help illustrate that, I'll show what I mean by that. So if we view the core D365 capability as what the system integrator is going to provide. So this is that software specific, we'll call it the technical and functional capability. This is what your system integrator and your reseller is going to provide. And again, even just within this one space, there's a lot of variation in the quality of resources and the quality of capabilities that you're going to get from different resellers. But let's say we found one that meets the criteria here. Chances are there's a lot of other capabilities that this firm doesn't have that's going to be very critical to the success of the project. So to give you a few examples, one is going to be change management. So the whole people side of the equation, the whole aspect of making sure that people understand what their new roles are going to look like, and even before that, understanding what the impacts to the organization are going to be so that we can communicate and help bring the organization along with those changes. That change management component is very important. And there's a lot of videos on my YouTube channel that you can check out that talks just about change management as it relates to D365 and ERP projects in general. Change management is one thing. The next thing is the overall, call it the PMO, the program management, the true governance and controls, the types of things that make sure that the overall project stays on track. This is just one work stream within the overall project, and even if the vendor or the VAR can handle this pretty well, we need someone that can manage the larger overarching type of capabilities and work streams throughout the project as well. There's also the business process piece of it, which is, you may think that's part of what the system integrator is going to do, and they will from a pure workflow perspective, but if we're talking about re-engineering our business and standardizing, consolidating, that's more than just a technology type of decision and process. That's something that we need to do as a team to do agnostic of the technology, which then we figure out how the technology will support those business process changes that we've identified. And then finally, this is somewhat related to the PMO side of this, we also want to look at overall QA, quality assurance, oversight, risk mitigation, identifying problems before they become problems, mitigating those problems before they become problems. So the QA component is very important as well. And then last but not least, on top of this, there's also internal resources, which very important because while you may lean on consultants for some of these other work streams here and here, we need to make sure we've got the right internal resources and a very strong internal team to support this project. So those are a handful of things that will hopefully get you started in your journey to identify the right system integrator or reseller for your D365 implementation. I hope you found this helpful. I encourage you to check out the links below for more advice and downloads and videos that you can check out that are related to D365 implementations. Or if you haven't chosen D365 yet and you're just considering it, I've also included some evaluation resources below. So I encourage you to check that out. And I also ask you to please like the video, comment if you have other comments, if there's certain findings you've had from going through a D365 implementation or in your initial research. I'd love to hear your comments below. So thanks very much for your time and hope you have a great day.